Hello and welcome to Flick and Reel, your friendly neighborhood fan cast. We are your source for news, reviews, and daily discourse. I am your host, Jesse Swift, and on today's show, once again, as always, I am joined by Scott Fox.
Your local source for random information.
All right, Scott, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a disclaimer because I did give you roughly 10 pages of notes for today's show.
It was a lot.
I mean, we have massive news dropping. Disney had their 4-hour-long investors meeting yesterday. And as anyone in the Hollywood sphere can tell you, whenever they have an investors meeting, the fans win because they just have so many things to announce because they want the investors to invest. It's a simple concept. Obviously, the big things are Disney proper, Star Wars, and Marvel. But really quickly, they had a few Hulu announcements as well, because if you didn't know, when they acquired Fox, Hulu was part of that. So there is a new live-action Alien series, and the show will be set on Earth and ran by Noah Hawley, who is known for his work on the FX show Legion with Dan Stevens, I believe his name is, which is a little bit of an X-Men spin-off, trippy, psychological TV show, and then also Fargo, which was kind of a spin-off of the movie. And the show will also be produced by Ridley Scott. So all of you diehard Alien fans that are enjoyed the original so very much and have been wanting to see Ridley Scott come back to the property, well, you got Alien Covenant. How'd that worked out for you? But he's still going to be attached to this. So, Scott, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm here. My concern with the Alien announcement really is just, I guess for people who are Alien fans, that's good news. Ridley Scott is good news. There's a lot of good things going on for it. However, they haven't really delivered well post Prometheus. Prometheus was pretty well received. The sequel to Prometheus, which I believe was Alien Covenant, right?
Yes.
That was marginal at best, and so it feels like there have been more subpar Alien franchise properties than there have been really top level Alien since Sigourney Weaver left.
Right. If we're running through it, you have Aliens, great films. Then you have Alien 3 and 4, I believe, which not well liked. You have 2 Alien versus Predator movies. One of them's kind of a guilty pleasure. The other one is just nothing redeemable about it. And then you have Prometheus, which, like you said, most people enjoyed it. And then Alien Covenant, which is kind of middle of the road.
Yep. Best part, you slipped it into the episode.
I did.
The best part
Too early. I might have spent myself.
No, it's all right. It's still in there. The best part of Alien or Prometheus is Michael Fassbender. Michael Fassbender really did a fantastic job with that movie and the role. And so that's one of the things that kind of makes me think, okay, what are they leaning into for an Alien series? Who's going to be the front runner of the show as far as the lead actor and the main character for the show?
That could be the single thing that, I mean, Noah Hawley, I'm not familiar with his work, only with his how well his work has been received. I tried watching a couple episodes of Legion, and I don't often say this, but it's a little bit right over the head. Not for me. Not a bad show, just not my cup of tea. And Fargo, it's on my list of 300 things to watch. So eventually I'll get there. But if they really nail a lead actor, that could be something that gets me really excited for it. I'd say
I just want to back up 1 second to the Alien stuff. You had mentioned Fargo as well. The problem I have is that there's so much to watch out there. There's so much content all over the place.
And Fargo has Martin Freeman in it.
Yeah, and there's who I love, incredible actor. And with Alien, I just feel like who was somebody clamoring for this and begging for this? Was that needed? Was it really a property that people were all over as far as wanting to have at all times? I don't know if that's really what was happening.
I think both the Alien and Predator franchises can be summed up in squandered potential.
Yeah, I totally see that.
Where the creators always see the potential, but rarely find the means to carry through with it. The Predator has had, I mean, whichever way you lean, I think you could argue for maybe 2 good films, whether you consider Predator 2 or Predators to be the better of the second films. But Predator is the only one that's like unanimously loved across the board.
Yeah, but you also had Schwarzenegger in there. You got to look at the sequels. You got Danny Glover trying to take on the lead action role, and Danny Glover is great, but it wasn't the same as having Schwarzenegger in the role. And I like Danny Glover, and he did. And I believe it's Maria Conchita Alonso was the female lead, kind of opposite him, and there's a lot of good stuff in Predator 2. And then you got Predators, which they tried to, which I love. It's a great action movie, but they bury Lawrence Fishburne as a weird like outcast hermit who's been just trying to survive on the planet, and they stick Adrian Brody as a lead man action star. And it was just
correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Topher Grace in that movie?
I believe so. Also not a tough guy.
What are you talking about? He's Venom.
You mean Eddie Brock, the photographer who, you know what? Let's just move on to Star Wars because we could do this all day. The fact is, I just feel like the Aliens is a property. They're putting out something that is going to cater to a very niche, small part of the market. And you're hoping that catches on. But a horror monster sci-fi series, while would be cool,
could be refreshing if done
correct, but you're also looking very small unless it's done perfectly. I just don't know who their audience really is for it as far as like mass audience.
It could be what potentially saves or gives a refreshing resurgence to the property. We will see. I'm down to it. I mean, at the very least, check out the trailer, and if the trailer intrigues me, maybe give it a few episodes. Yep. So let's move on to the first of our big news, which is Star Wars. Nothing but Star Wars.
There's a lot.
Oh my gosh. I think it's hard to say who won between Star Wars and Marvel in these announcements, but I think Marvel had more to actually show us than tell us, and Star Wars is a lot of telling. We didn't get to see a whole lot, but let's talk about what's probably, I think, the most anticipated for me and you. I don't want to speak for you, but titled ObiWan Kenobi, not just Kenobi or the Obi-Wan show. This series takes place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith and will feature not only the return of Ewan McGregor, but also Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader. And I said specifically because in the Kathleen Kennedy, when doing the presentation, said Hayden Christensen will be back as Darth Vader. And the reason I make a point of that before we get into it is there's a lot of people talking about, oh, it'll just probably be flashback scenes or this or that. And I was like, they did not say Anakin Skywalker. She said Darth Vader. There is a difference.
There's a huge difference.
Scott, how do we feel?
This is the biggest bit of news for all of it. Of all the things that Star Wars could be spinning off, be doing, I wanted this before Mandalorian, and I love Mandalorian.
Oh, I wanted this when they started announcing spinoffs. When they're like, we're doing Rogue One and Solo. I'm like, give me Obi-Wan.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm glad we're getting a series instead of just a one-off movie. Solo, I thought, was very well done, even though commercially it was one of the lowest as far as Star Wars goes. But it's a great property.
Sure.
And I love seeing this character develop, and the fact that Ewan McGregor is reprising the role. He is the brightest star and the most potential and the best of all of the prequels is Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. At the end, you are absolutely in love with his character, and you grieve for him when he has to basically dismantle his best friend, his brother. Right. And the fact that we also get, I know a lot of people don't like Hayden Christensen. I happen to love Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker.
Has to.
I love him. And I thought, despite some of the writing and despite some of the voice cracks in
I do have to ask you a quick question. Like, did you use the term dismantle when disarm was sitting there waiting for you?
It would have been too easy. Too easy. And he was well, I guess he's less human than machine now. But I just love that they're bringing him back. But I'll be honest, I was really hoping this would be an opportunity to see some of the Darth Maul, Obi-Wan Kenobi head off. Now, I know we already got a lot of that in the animated series, and they don't want to touch on the same exact stuff, or because then you're looking at making a remake of the animated stuff to put it into a live
exactly action. And I think here's the before getting into Hayden Christensen too much, I think the hard part about that is we have seen the end of Maul's story and the connection between him and Obi-Wan, and between the Clone Wars and that scene in Rebels, Darth Maul was searching for Obi-Wan. There was no interaction between the two. So I agree it would have been great to see those two live action again, but I understand why that's not really the approach that they can go with. I am, despite not being the biggest fan of the portrayal of Anakin in the prequels, and that's not all on Hayden Christensen. I think George Lucas did some very weak writing and even weaker directing. I have since seen Hayden Christensen in things where I wouldn't give him an Oscar, but I think he's a good actor.
And I think that's where I fall with Hayden Christensen is he's better than what was put on the screen.
Yes.
That a lot of that falls onto Lucas, the writing, the story, all that stuff. Natalie Portman is an Oscar winning lead actress in movies.
One of the
and
worst
yet if you watch Star Wars, but that's not on her. She delivered the lines as they were given. And then, a lot of what makes a movie is post-production. The editing, so much emphasis for Lucas in the prequels was put on visual, stunning, and innovating all these things. He forgot that a movie needs a story, and a good one. And it had a decent story, but it was not
executed,
told in a very good way, and it was not put together. And the lack of emotion in a lot of the dialogue it's very robotic and it's hard to listen to. And I would say that it's worse on Natalie Portman than it is on Hayden Christensen. But even Hayden Christensen, when he's having some pinnacle moments in Revenge of the Sith, we get voice cracks and we get whiny. If you're not with me, you're my enemy. Like, why did your voice go way high like a 13-year-old? What happened?
Lauren's favorite thing to reference is whenever I say that I'm going to do something, she always looks at me deadpan and goes, "You will try."
Oh my gosh.
It kills me every time.
That's so good.
We could very easily talk about Obi-Wan and Hayden Christensen all day. So I want to leave you with a thought or question because everyone's very excited. I understand that. I'm really excited to see him back. I have thoughts though. We're bringing him back as Darth Vader, which if you want to have his physical presence there, that's understandable. But my question is, are we just bringing him in to A, cover him up, or B, occasionally when the helmet's off, see a scarred version of him? And we, up until this point, really haven't had much Darth Vader that was not James Earl Jones. Even as jarring as it was in Revenge of the Sith, the second Hayden Christensen puts on that helmet, it's James Earl Jones's voice, despite it not making sense. So are we going to hear Hayden Christensen's voice coming through that mask? Because to me, it feels off, even though I know that he is Anakin, unless they do something to it. I mean, I'm not saying it's not doable, but I'm interested to see how they carry out with that and what Hayden Christensen appearing as Darth Vader means to both the show and the continuity and just overall our headcanon as fans. Is there anything that you think on that?
Yeah, that's a huge question. But in a lot of the comic book canon and a lot of the books and everything, you do see a lot of Darth Vader with his helmet off, especially early on. Now, as he goes through battles and as he becomes more mutated by the machines, he has to cover himself up more and more and more. I think the better thing would be, are we going to get if we're going to do that, let's intermix some David Prowse voice in there too, which shout out to David Prowse. He passed away November 28th, David Prowse passed away.
Right.
And physically, he's the reason Darth Vader was so imposing. I think David Prowse was 6'8", something like that. Just a massive man and a bodybuilder, huge. And then you take him
to the trainer.
Yeah, when you hear the audio of him reading the lines and then before it's voiced over, because he thought he was going to be saying the lines in the movies. And so when he went in and he sat down to watch Star Wars in the theaters and heard James Earl Jones, he was like, what happened? Where'd my voice go?
Right.
And
there's a whole documentary about it.
Absolutely. But David Prowse is he's not given enough credit for what he did. And if they're doing the same thing to Hayden Christensen that they did to David Prowse, what's the point? So I believe we will have to see some of his face. And when the helmet's off, maybe you'll get his regular audio. Or we're going to see maybe they start shifting the voice away from James Earl Jones and we get more of the Hayden Christensen voice coming through. Maybe it's more of a digitized Hayden Christensen voice. But I have to assume they're not going to do a David Prowse to him, especially because Hayden Christensen's a bigger name than David Prowse ever was.
So I'm very excited, but also I wouldn't say cautiously like optimistic or pessimistic, just curious, very curious. So with that, let's move on to the next topic and clip through some of these a little quicker. I have no problem spending more time on that one because, like you said, that's probably the biggest thing to come out of Star Wars. But it's not the only thing.
One last thing. Best action sequences, lightsaber duels in live action. Still Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader as Hayden Christensen on Mustafar. Their lightsaber dueling is the best that Star Wars has ever offered on screen.
That does remind me of something because some people are saying, but wait, Obi-Wan never saw Darth Vader between Revenge of the Sith and New Hope. There is some interpretable gray area there. And then when Obi-Wan says Darth Vader's now more machine than man or whatever, something along those lines, how does he know that? How does he know exactly what happened to him?
I'm just wondering how much more of Darth Vader can Obi-Wan want to cut off before we get to the point of The Empire Strikes Back.
He's still got to take
out how
off,
much robot he is.
He's still got to take off his little Wookiee.
Yep.
So I mean, there's lines that you can pick and choose throughout the original trilogy that hint at they had another interaction after Revenge of the Sith. When we last met, I was the learner. Now I am the master. All right. Moving on to our favorite two boys, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. They are in development of 2 additional series outside of The Mandalorian. Number 1 being Ahsoka, starring Rosario Dawson. And secondly, Rangers of the New Republic. Both series will be set during the events of Mando and will lead to, as Kathleen Kennedy put it, an exciting crossover culmination event. What do we think about these 2 series? Scott, take it away.
This is huge. We're expanding the universe that is currently the most beloved in the Star Wars universe. The Mando is the best thing. You say it all the time. We talked about it last week with our Monday Lorian, that the Ahsoka reveal and her getting her own show, she was fantastic. Rosario Dawson, perfect.
And
casting.
tying all this animated stuff from Dave Filoni's projects, which we'll talk about again a little bit later, with the live action, just in the novels, bringing everything together for Star Wars and having it being accepted by everybody universally.
Yes, I think it's one of those things where this is the opportunity to really take the story into new places, uncharted territory, to build something for the future. And it's with characters that are well received. We have a large gap of time between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. And so they can fill all this gap with all this wonderful story and characters. And Mando's fantastic. We've already seen Ahsoka in Mando, and she was great. It is still the highest rated episode at a 9.6. The next best episode is the Boba Fett episode at 9.5. So the opportunity to see all these characters carrying forward is so good, and it's fan treatment.
What Dave and I almost said Dave and Filoni. What Dave and John have done so well is telling new stories, but using familiar imagery and themes. Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen that a lot in Mandalorian. And so it allows people that are casual fans to get into the Star Wars universe, and it rewards people that are diehard fans. Like, I consider myself a pretty heavy Star Wars fan, but I'm learning something every episode. And I'm being educated by people that were Star Wars fans before I was born. So it's been quite an adventure, and it's been so much fun. And to see them take on Ahsoka into live action, I'm very excited to see that. But I expected that. I'm not surprised by the Ahsoka show. A lot of people talk about the Jedi episode being a backdoor pilot to that. What is surprising and something we haven't even heard rumblings about is the Rangers of the New Republic. And I am trying to imagine what that could include. Do we have, Paul Seung-Hung Lee, I believe is his name, that plays Carter, one of the New Republic pilots that we keep seeing show up from Kim's Convenience. Is he going to be one of these Rangers? Some people have suggested maybe Cara Dune. However, I believe that she is, even though she's working for the New Republic now, she's a marshal for Navarro. I don't think she necessarily needs to be traveling everywhere. And there's a lot of stuff with Gina Carano, personally, that I don't care about seeing more of her than I have to. But that's another topic. I think maybe it's all new characters.
I would lean towards it's all new characters. However, the idea that them tying in those pilots who are kind of rebel cops out there patrolling the universe, I think that would be a great tie-in, and you could do a lot of really good stuff. I think essentially we're talking about a space cop movie or series, right? Yeah. And how does that intermix with everybody else? Are they tying with Mando?
Bad boys.
Again, we have all these properties stacking up against the Empire. It's always everybody versus the Empire, which is fine.
And I think what's really exciting, and I've seen a lot of articles that have completely slept on this part of the story, is that these three, Mandalorian, which is continuing bare minimum one other season that was confirmed, and then Ahsoka and the Rangers of the New Republic are all taking place in the same time, and they're all leading towards one big event. Now, I can't even begin to imagine, is that Thrawn? Is it something we don't know about yet? What could this big event be? And is it something that is going to have potential ramifications or a little bit explaining for the sequel trilogy? Because like you said, there's such a big time period between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. Is this big crossover event going to be something that solidifies maybe the rise of the First Order?
Again, there's this 30-year gap that we got, right? And they can do whatever they want to fill this void in and stretch it out. And one of my hopes is that as this builds towards one big thing, Thrawn would be absolutely huge. In the Ahsoka series, are we going to see we both have this feeling that at some point Mando's going to have to hand off Grogu to be trained, to use his powers for good and not evil. Mando can't do that himself, even as a father. And so the question is it Ezra? Is it Ahsoka? Do they bring somebody else in? Where's Thrawn? All these.
You got some crazy Mace theories back there. You know, there's all kinds of things that it could potentially be.
Yeah, that's my not understanding or not knowing exactly what their vision for Rangers is really going to be. We have to lean on what we've already seen, and it could be those pilots. But thinking that it's going to build to one major event. I mean, if done properly, it will easily be the biggest thing. Now, are we talking is this a 20 movie buildup to Thanos? That's going to take 10 years. I hope not. But we've already got one, or we're going to have 2 seasons done before we see any more Mando. And Mando's season 3 is supposed to debut Christmas Day 21.
Yes, thank you for picking up on that. I didn't have it in my notes, but that is correct.
And with that, okay, so that gives us a year. Well, if they're already working on Ahsoka, that means are we going to have Ahsoka in before that, helping fill some of the gap? Or are we going to have the Rangers show coming in before that?
And something we didn't see, even though we have been hearing rumblings of for the last couple of weeks, is supposedly they were looking at doing a Boba Fett show, but we didn't hear any announcements about that. However, that seemed to be coming from fairly credible sources. So is that something that they are just withholding for the time being?
That's a very good question. Maybe it's something they're playing, or perhaps they're just going to use him as a tie-in between these other things.
I would love for Boba Fett to be the Hulk of the Mandalorian universe. We'll call it the Mandoverse for right now, since everything's spinning off of the Mandalorian. Just like everything on the CW was called the Arrowverse for a long time. This is the Mandoverse. And I'm sure I'm going to coin that phrase. Give it like a year, and people are going to start saying Mandoverse.
Marked. That's right here, trademarked.
That's right.
I think that would be a great way to be able to bounce him around, and he could play roles in different places, because his role with Mando is limited. He's there to fulfill the safety of the child. So once they rescue Grogu, he's fulfilled his oath to Mando. So in that case, or is he going to go back, or do we get a little bit of Now, granted, Boba stayed on Tatooine for this entire gap of time, right? I guess the 5 years. But do we get to see earlier Boba? Or are they going to bring him back for Kenobi in some fashion?
Yeah.
And we get early Boba Fett,
pre-Sarlacc.
Pre-Sarlacc. Those are a lot of good questions, but certainly Boba Fett is one of the better characters, and he and Fennec as a tandem is absolutely dynamic. And so,
and I want to bring Fennec up here in a second. Moving on to our next topic, whenever you're ready.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of, we were talking about Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni's animated legacy, and I say legacy because he will be involved with, but I don't believe he's actually show running this. I'm not sure, but his legacy will continue in The Bad Batch. This show will follow the Clone Force 99, a ragtag clone unit that were first introduced in the final season of Clone Wars. And the series takes place, as we see in the trailer, immediately after the events of Order 66, when Palpatine begins the First Galactic Empire.
I think this will be a really good show as well. Again, if there's anybody I'm trusting a show to, it's not Kathleen Kennedy. It's Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni.
They have seemed less excited in that presentation. And we will have the bad, but I'm sorry. I do not like spreading hate or negativity.
You can't have somebody in charge of something so important, or something like Star Wars and the entire universe of Star Wars, who doesn't care about Star Wars.
Can I do a brief compare and contrast? Look at Kevin Feige talk about Marvel and the energy and excitement he brings. Also, the producer of Marvel, like Kathleen Kennedy is like the overall producer of Lucasfilm. And they talk about Star Wars and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, she presents it as though it's a burden. Like, oh, here's more crud we're having to deal with because fans keep loving
yourself, it. Then get out of
here. For somebody who doesn't like Star Wars or anything that it shows, do something else with your free time. Or you know what? That's fine. She's been in charge, and we got Mandalorian, so let her stay in charge of Mandalorian. Stay in charge, because if they keep pumping out stuff like that, just keep handing it to people like Favreau, people like Dave Filoni, the independent directors of each one of those episodes who've been dynamic. Those are all great things. So as far as Kathleen Kennedy goes, she just seems disinterested in Star Wars as an entire thing. So, which is weird that she's in charge of it.
I have seasons and seasons of Clone Wars to get caught up on. But I've seen trailers for the last season that was on Disney Plus. I've seen a little bit of the Bad Batch stuff. Very excited to look into it. And I brought up Fennec earlier. Did you watch the Bad Batch trailer?
Yes.
Okay. Did you notice a familiar helmet that we might have seen in Mandalorian?
Yes, I did.
Be interesting to see potentially the earlier days of Fennec. I can't think of the last name. I had it earlier. Fennec Shan, is that right?
Yes, I believe that's correct. But again, I just love the fact that they're doing such a great job of tying these characters between properties and intermixing them.
And if so you don't know, you're fine.
Continuity. Yeah, but we get more continuity to the universe. There's a person's story arc is not just this little thing. It's, here's this person from here. Same thing with Ahsoka. We have all this incredible story for her. And then we get a little bit of it in Mandalorian. We're going to get some more of it in her own series. And Fennec, same thing.
Can I say something I think even solidifies more that that's likely to be Fennec? Is what episode did we see Fennec introduced in season 1? It was Dave Filoni's episode.
Correct.
So I think he likes to keep it in the family. Do we get Ming-Na Wen back to voice her? I sure hope so, and I don't see why not.
Yeah, she's still a part of the property, and they could easily, if she's going to be there continuing to work on other stuff, having her do voice work would be easy peasy. Right. And then again, you maintain continuity.
All right, so that is it for the animated content. Now
I need to pause for 1 second.
All right, taking a look at what release-wise should be our next live-action series in the Star Wars Disney Plus universe, being that they are already on their way filming, and that is the Cassian Andor series, or titled Andor, starring Diego Luna from Star Wars anthology film Rogue One. And his final chapters were seen in Rogue One, but this series will focus on the grit of the rebellion and what it really takes to spark a revolution. Scott, did you happen to watch the behind-the-scenes video?
Yes. again, excited for this. I'm always a little less pumped up for things where we know the finale, we know the finish. However, I know the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi's life, and I'm still absolutely jacked for that. But there's a big gap between Obi-Wan Kenobi, young, middle-aged, and senior citizen Obi-Wan Kenobi, who gives himself up to the Force.
And I think it's where does your investment lie? I think with Obi-Wan, he's many people's favorite Star Wars character. And yes. I think the purpose of having an Andor show is not, hey, is Cassian Andor your favorite or your favorite character in the Star Wars universe? It's more so about the rebellion, the birth of the rebellion. Yes. And we saw some of that in Rogue One, but I think the whole point in having this show is here's a character that you know, because we don't know a whole lot of characters in this time period. Here's a character that you know, other than like Leia, being part of the rebellion, which is not, it's not pretty. Starting a revolution is it's dirty. Ask the French. You know, there's a lot of things with, you know, spies and espionage. And I think for those elements, and then also the possibility of getting Alan Tudyk back as K2SO, I'm looking forward to a lot of the additional elements, more so than just the idea of seeing more Cassian.
I think one of the best things about Rogue One, though, is the fact that Cassian, when Jen Erso is complaining about stuff, Cassian gets upset because he's like, you have no idea what it is to fight a rebellion, because he's been doing it. He's happened to do like the 6. Yeah. And so he's got a lot of backstory that can be filled in, but he's been fighting this battle for a long time. And a character who, to be honest, I really didn't like a whole lot at the beginning of the movie. I'm like, this guy's annoying. Yeah. And but by the end of the movie, and you find out what he's had to do to go through and live with the rebellion, and
what he's willing to sacrifice.
Absolutely. All these parts really help build his character. And the frustrating part, or not frustrating, but one of the pluses is at the end, you really do like the character. And when he dies, it's almost bittersweet, because you want more of his and Jen Erso's story as they're hugging it out. You know, and waiting for the flash of light to just wipe them down.
And Judgment Day style.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But I like that character grew on me throughout Rogue One, and Rogue One also is sneakily possibly one of the best. It's a top 3 Star Wars property across the board.
Oh, I agree.
Maybe if not top 3, it's definitely up there in the upper half. It's really good.
It's better than some whole trilogies.
Absolutely. And one of the cool things I love about that movie is the non-ticker at the start. It shows you the or I guess it doesn't come in with the movies. You see the stars and then it just pans down to the planet and you're like, wait a minute. Everyone literally was waiting for the bump.
I think there's an audible
it didn't happen. We all sat there was like, what just happened? It felt like a weird cold open to a movie, and everyone just went, well, this is strange. But it separated it from the other Star Wars movies. Especially because it's not part of trilogies. It's not part of a preset series. But man, that movie is good.
And
so good.
The double feature sit down of Rogue One and New Hope is just so good.
The only problem is Darth Vader in Rogue One is way more intense than Darth Vader in
ever.
Yeah, that is the best. When he literally pins the guy to the ceiling, cuts him in half, and then drops him, and he grabs all the blasters and yanks them past him. He shows some skills there that are so awesome. Plus, we see him in the chamber floating up. But again, we're getting off onto a tangent. That movie has so much good for it. And to be able to go back and see more of that character. And what's cool is with that character, we might be able to see more Darth Vader.
Yeah, I love the budget and I think they've said that Mon Mothma is returning as well, who we saw briefly in Rogue One. But I love that somehow the budget, at least from the behind the scenes, looks like it's even more than Mandalorian. But I love seeing all the practical effects, whether it be with vehicles, creature designs. You know, we have yet to see some of the special effects really, but
I think as far as fans go, the combination of practical plus digital effects makes the movie much more Star Wars-ish. That's what made the original trilogy so good. That's what detracted a lot of people from the prequels, is it was all digitized. Yoda did not move or feel like a puppet. He moved and felt like a normal person. And what gave him some of his part of who he was his awkward puppetish movements. And when they tried to smooth that out and take it out, you didn't have the same character left there anymore. And so the practical effect makes a difference in the Star Wars universe. And it appears as though we're going to get a good dose of practical mixed with the digital. And I think that's where people will fall in love with even Mando, is that combination. I'm
really looking forward to that. And more so just what it means to the Star Wars universe. And speaking of things that are important to the Star Wars universe and things that have yet to be explored very much, The Acolyte is a new Star Wars series helmed by Russian doll creator Leslie Headland, and is set in the High Republic era, which is recently introduced in some of the canon novels. I think a lot of Star Wars is going to start going this way and exploring the High Republic. And I believe the High Republic is kind of a hybrid of thoughts and ideas, because in old legends we had Knights of the Old Republic and stuff like that. And this is hundreds of years ago, not thousands of years ago. So they have said in the books Yoda makes appearances, a much younger Yoda. So potentially we could see him show up maybe in the show. But anyways, the series will focus on the dark side of the Force and the Sith gaining power. There's not a whole lot much else that is known, but the Acolyte, notice it's not called the Padawan, because these are dark side users, and I think there's a lot of really fun, interesting questions and ideas that could be explored with a dark side focused show. Scott, are you excited for this?
Yeah, some of my favorite now non-canon books from the Star Wars universe are about the Sith. One of my favorite books, I believe, is called The Red Dawn, and it's basically a Sith having it's literally zombie Sith. It's weird, but it's such a good book, and it tells a lot of backstories about Sith temples, Sith training, and all this stuff they go through, and that's something that I love. I'm glad they're going to expand on.
How old is Darth Plagueis?
Wasn't he close to immortal? Who knows?
Right. So can Darth Plagueis appear in the Acolyte?
The better thing is to know when Darth Plagueis died, and then you can do everything pre that.
That's right.
Well, we know that Palpatine. Yeah, we know Palpatine took him out, but he taught Palpatine. But Palpatine obviously learned something, because he's been able to maintain staying alive very, very, very long, well beyond his time.
All right. So moving on, also announced is a droid story. It's a story about 3PO and R2. Yep, moving on. Anything to say about that?
Again, this falls under the category of things I didn't need from Star Wars. And I think the people who are in charge think that this will be fan treatment. CPO or 3PO and R2D2.
That's true. Go, Scott.
Dear goodness. 3PO and R2D2 are support characters. They're not lead characters. And to build a story around those two, also, we've seen their arc. Okay, we know where they started, and we know basically where they ended. And granted, they're still alive, but where are you going to fill this in? It wasn't necessary. We've got enough of them, and we have enough character development. Are we bringing back what is his first name?
Anthony Daniels.
Anthony Daniels. I wanted to say Andy. Anthony Daniels for 3PO. Like, how long can this guy continue to play that role? And he is the definitive C-3PO. So
always, there's as far as I know, never been another person to voice 3PO in anything.
Correct. And
animated or otherwise.
That, to me, it feels like your statement right at the very beginning, and I don't know why we're still talking about it, was, okay, moving on. Yeah, it was not something necessary.
Scott, I tried.
But I felt like it had to be said again that this is not anything anybody was asking for. Not something we needed. So
right. I'll move on from a droid story, and me and Scott frequently talk about Solo and how much we enjoyed it, and we would like to see a sequel, or somehow Solo be continued on Disney Plus or theatrically or otherwise. Well, we're kind of getting a sequel to Solo, and that is Lando is getting his very own, they're calling it an event series. And when I hear event series, to me, that is another way of saying a limited series, a one and done, a 6 episode, here's the story, which I believe Obi-Wan is also going to be an event series, not an ongoing one. But the series will be ran by Justin, I want to say it's pronounced Simeon.
I think Simeon, but
made famous from Dear White People, which isn't something I have seen, but I've heard good things about. We do not have confirmation on the timeline or who may be playing the role, but I'm sure we would love to see Donald Glover return as the galaxy's most charming scoundrel. Scott, are you looking forward to this? Do you hope it's Donald Glover? Do you hope Billy D makes an appearance? What are your thoughts?
I shook my head. I don't. This falls also into the category of things I didn't feel like I needed.
Okay.
It's one of my big detractors for Solo was that I felt like, and again, I didn't feel like Aaron Einreicherson, whatever his last name is,
Alden Ehrenreich. You're so close.
Alden Ehrenreich was bad as Han Solo, but it didn't feel like it felt like he was playing Han Solo, but not trying to mimic Harrison Ford, if that makes sense. Yeah. I felt like Donald Glover was mimicking Billy D. Williams. There's a lot of spots where he was even doing the voice of Billy D. Williams, trying to really throw that smoothness in. And it worked in the movie. But if they're going to do that, give me Donald Glover. Don't give me Donald Glover playing Billy D. Williams.
Okay.
That was my frustration with it. And also this character, again, he's more of a tie-in with other guys in the story. It's not really a solo standalone. Now, am I glad they're trying to give him something? I'm glad they're putting out properties, but it wouldn't have been something I would have knocked on the door and said, give me this.
This is kind of how I felt about when they first announced the anthology series. They're like, we're going to tell stories that aren't episodic. And everyone's like, Obi-Wan, give us Obi-Wan. And they're like, did you want Solo and Rogue One? We're like, no, that's not what we asked for, but fine. And then I think a lot of people that watched Solo really enjoyed it. And so they're like, give us a Solo sequel. Give us a Solo sequel. And they're like, are you asking for Lando? And we're like, no. You know? So it's just like, I feel like they're so close to the point and they just miss it every time. Now, does that mean I don't want to see more Lando? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. But do I think I need to watch a whole series with Lando in it? I don't. I'd love to see him pop up in other things, but I don't need to watch a whole. That being said, I'm going to watch it. Absolutely.
My thought on this one is I didn't want Solo either. And I love the movie. I don't want Lando. I'm sure I'll love it. But yeah, it's one more of those things that I'm just like, okay, sure. Why not? I mean, again, it's not about what they're making. It's about the quality of what they make. And if what they put out is top shelf, I'll take it. But again, I want Donald Glover playing the smooth, suave guy, but not trying to mimic Billy D. Williams.
And I think we will be forced to see more of the unique individuality of Donald Glover if it's over the course of several episodes and not so much a contained thing like Solo was. All right, wrapping up our conversation of Lando and moving on to, I'd say maybe the second biggest announcement from Star Wars, I think in my opinion, and that is that Patty, middle name freaking Jenkins, is directing Rogue Squadron. And there's a lot of video game fans that are just squealing right now because popularity of the Rogue Squadron games. And there's also been novels based around Rogue Squadron. Just good old-fashioned X-Wing pilots doing their thing. And I think we've, like Rogue One, have loved the boots on the ground approach to Star Wars. This film is said to be set after the events of Rise of Skywalker and will mark our first foray into the future of Star Wars, unless you count the Lego Holiday Special, which I do not.
I don't think anybody's really counting. I mean, maybe Disney sees it as canon, but that shouldn't affect anything. The great thing about this is the intro video. Yes, of her on the rollerblades, talk about her father as a fighter pilot. I don't think you could have picked somebody better to move forward into the future of Star Wars, especially with a fighter pilot movie than Patty Jenkins. And not only that, she's been outstanding in everything she's made. She really is an incredible director.
It's not a long track record, but it is an impressive one.
Yeah.
Because like out of the gate, pretty much you had Monster, which if it didn't win an Academy Award, I know for a fact it was nominated.
That's the one with Charlize Theron. Yes. It did not win the Best Picture, but it did win Best Actress.
Okay.
Charlize Theron won the Oscar for Best Actress in that movie.
And then she kind of like disappeared for a decade. And I think she said she tried to get work, but nobody would give it to her, which, like, what are you doing, Hollywood? And then finally she gets Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 84. And I am excited to. I mean, I'd love to see her. I mean, I haven't seen the second Wonder Woman, obviously, but I'd love to see her stick with comic book properties. But it's also very, I think, healthy for directors to leave a franchise before they get burnt out. Sam Raimi and Christopher Nolan. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see her jump into something else. I think some people would like to see her leave genre titles, but I think a Rogue Squadron movie would be refreshing both for Patty and for the Star Wars universe.
It's something different. Like if they said they were going to extend the Star Wars universe by going with another, like what's Rey's future? Oh, like the problem is she's had a trilogy. Yes, a lot of people want to know what happens next for her. But if we just continue on this next path, like how we're just continuing the Luke Skywalker or the Anakin Skywalker story, it's just going forward with Rey. And this gives us a fresh take on the universe. That's something that's not heavily weighted by Jedi.
And I think the message has been received fairly clearly is that we, as a fan base for the most part, are ready to move on from the Skywalker saga.
And anything Rian Johnson makes, boom, got it into another episode. But the great thing is she has no expectations right now to throw out the window. So,
and I think creatively for directors that are creative forces like Patty Jenkins is, I think that's the best thing to do. Like with Wonder Woman, they're like, hey, this movie is going to exist in this DC universe that we are creating. But, you know, if you want to throw in a mention of Bruce Wayne at the beginning, that's really all that we're asking. Like, you know, other than that, make your Wonder Woman movie. And I think with 84, from everything I've seen, it's been even more so like, just do your movie, Patty. And for the overall DC universe, sometimes it's not great because there's a lack of cohesion or
continuity.
Continuity and connectivity. But for the movies individually, I think it's great. Look at James Wan and Aquaman. But moving forward, I'm really excited for it, and I would love to see something more in line with Rogue One as far as a more serious, realistic's not the right word, but just Star Wars movies that have some grit. Sometimes lean away from the fantastical. Like I think Mandalorian, we're starting to get into the fantastical a bit more, but it just started out as a Western bounty hunter show, and I think that's some of the times when it works the best.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling we're going to see some of that in the finale, but we've already covered that in another podcast. The key for me with this will be what's it going to build towards in the future. So we earlier talked about the new properties with Ahsoka and the Rangers that are going to tie in with Mandalorian to build to one major thing. Well, with this Rogue Squadron movie, are we laying the foundation for a bunch of movies that will build toward something? And then what is that? What is the future long-term? Does anybody at Disney or at Lucas have a 10-year vision for where we want to get that everything can work towards?
And somebody brought up, which I think would be really cool, is you know who's still alive during this time period that would fit into a Rogue Squadron movie? Wedge Antilles.
Wedge.
Or Poe Dameron.
There's a bunch. Seeing Poe Dameron come in afterward, you could continue some of those stories. Now, did they give a timeline for how far after Rise of Skywalker that
they didn't? They just said that this would be set in the future after the events of Rise of Skywalker.
See, the great thing about that is you have so much room to play with. You could do literally anything.
Who are they fighting? So the First Order has fallen. Are we doing remnants of the Empire again? Is there a new threat? What are the space cops policing? Like, I think there's a lot of interesting things. What is the new Star War? I'm fascinated to find out.
Well, anytime you have a breakdown of power and certain people in charge,
vacuums.
Well, what happens is somebody is going to start to step up and want to take control and want to take power. It inevitably happens, no matter with any society or anything. Someone will come in and want to fill the role of being in charge and grabbing as much power as they can. And so, again, they have essentially they've given her, Patty Jenkins, a blank slate to say, okay, and granted, I'm sure there's people advising in this, but they have this blank canvas to say you can create anything forward that you want. And I'm glad they gave it to somebody who I think has the creative mind to be able to do that. Shoot, she went back in the past with Wonder Woman, was able to create
twice now.
Yeah, and able to still have that work continuity wise with the future. So,
all right. Deep breath. We are done with Star Wars.
Thank
we
goodness.
are got a whole adventure ahead of us. Marvel contents.